Hello and welcome to Sunday Night Conversations. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney. Tonight's episode brought to us by our good friends at Netting Pros. Netting Professionals is the proud official netting partner of D1 Baseball and Sunday Night Conversations. Netting Pros prides themselves on improving programs one facility at a time. They are the industry leaders in sports facility netting and equipment solutions. This is interesting, especially given tonight's topic. You can find their products in literally all the top programs in college baseball, talking about Tennessee, our defending national champions, University of Texas, Arkansas, Texas A&M, the Oregon State Beavers, LSU, Mississippi State, and so many more. Whether it's batting practice equipment, facility netting, custom wall padding, or custom facility improvements, Netting Pros is the top choice in the industry for facility equipment solutions. Visit nettingpros.com today to learn more. So thanks again to our good friends at Netting Pros. So pumped up to have them sponsoring d1baseball.com overall, and of course the Sunday Night Conversations. All right, so tonight's guest, as you can see, is former Oregon State skipper Pat Casey. And so here, Case, here as we get into this thing, I had fun getting myself into trouble on Twitter. I said that the job you all did building Oregon State baseball, I said on Twitter that you can make an argument it's the single best program building job in NCAA sports history, any sport, I don't care, like it's the best. And it was fun. You can imagine a lot of people agreed. Other people had other programs that they recommended, but it was still fun. And so as we jump in here, Case, here's my premise why I wanted to have this conversation with you. You know, I think Oregon State's a really important program in college baseball. You know, there's Oregon State, the Beavs have won 3 national titles since 6, I should say, since 2006. No one else has done that. Like that leads the country. And part of that, when you think about at the top of our sport right now, we don't have great parity. The SEC is dominating college baseball. One program clipped the SEC for a national title. That was your Beavs in 2018. And then, you know, of course, we were all, if you're a college baseball fan, you were heartbroken last year when you saw all this conference realignment stuff and the Beavs and the Washington State Cougs get left out. Now it's kind of righting itself and more chaos ensues. But I just think that Oregon State baseball is really important to the future of college baseball. And I was getting discouraged, but then I thought, if I look at the job you and your staff did building it the first time, that was against all odds. Like that was crazy. You know, what do the kids say? That was banana cakes to think that you guys could go from where you were to what happened. So I'm going to tee you up with this, Case. So, you know, you're an Oregon guy. You played basketball and baseball. You were a Portland Pilot, if I'm not mistaken. You played hoops and baseball there. Then 7 years in professional baseball, and then 7 years as the head coach at George Fox. And then in 95, you get the job at Oregon State. What, like, and by the way, there was not the Pac-10 then. You guys were in the Pac-10 North. So it was separate. When you got the job in 95, like what did you feel like you were walking into?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And, you know, when you said your name was Michael Patrick Rooney, I want you to know I'm Patrick Michael Casey.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, you know, we got
Love
that.
it.
So, you know, I like that. Well, first of all, when I got the job, I was elated that I was getting an opportunity to coach at the Division I level. And being a Northwest guy, being at that time it was an NAIA school, George Fox College. And, you know, I was making $3,000 a year and, you know,
Wow.
yeah. And I was there 7 years. You know, people don't realize that. You know, I think a lot of people look at teams and I bet you that I could go find a lot of coaches out there right now that have had a lot of success and would tell you, yeah, but, you know, people forget I was a high school coach or I was a, you know, junior college coach, whatever it may be. I think some of our greatest stories as coaches that have been around young men and have had success with them is how we got there. And, you know, some of the best things that resulted from that for me were some of the toughest things I had to go through. You know, the journey for me was a struggle, and so getting the job at Oregon State, certainly I was elated. You know, it was a big time job for me. It was close to home, and immediately when I got here, Mike, you know, when I walked onto the field at Oregon State, we used to play them when I was at George Fox, and you know, it was tremendous. And when I walked onto the field that first year, I knew there was something bigger. I just did. I just knew it. I knew I had that feeling that, look, this is good, but we got to get out of playing Portland State, Portland U, Gonzaga, Washington State. There's too good a baseball here. When I left, Mike Thurman was first round pick out of Oregon State in '94. My first year was '95, and they had a very, very good club that year. They didn't even go to a regional. So I just knew something had to happen, and I was hoping that I could hold on long enough to be part of that.
It's awesome. So one of the things we're going to do on this showcase is we're going to talk about, how you all built Oregon State, to the powerhouse it became. And then at the end, I want to talk about like the future of Oregon State. Like what do we think are the keys for Oregon State baseball going forward in this changing environment? But so this is one of the most interesting things to me about what you all built. And of course, my 6 years at Arizona State intersected with your time at Oregon State, and it was one of my favorite stories I ever tell is my first year at ASU was '99, and you guys had a lefty, Scott Nicholson, who was just a handful. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he was like, his face was in your dugout. He was so good. Like, he was awesome. And we lost, and Murph was hot, and I'm just thinking, man, I'm getting fired in year one. Like, I didn't even know Arizona State would lose a baseball game to Oregon State. I had no command of this, being an East Coast kid. But your first 4 years, it's still the Pac-10 North, and Washington was on a real heater then under Ken Knutson. My perception is they were really good, and so you guys were finishing second to them. And then in '99, we become the Pac-10 together, right? Like there's no North and South there. There's no more of the six pack anymore. And like that felt like a really difficult adjustment for your program where, like now you're playing Arizona State, Arizona, USC, UCLA, Stanford, Cal. And I want to ask you about that case, but I want to tee it up this way. Here's one thing that people can forget. I know the SEC is very dominant in college baseball right now, but when you came up at Oregon State, the West Coast had been incredibly dominant in college baseball. Think about the 1970s, that decade. The West Coast won 9 out of 10 national championships. In the 1980s, the West Coast won 6 out of 10 national championships. They'd won 16 out of 20. And it's not like the 90s were terrible. I mean, Fullerton won a title in the 90s. USC won a title in the 90s. Pepperdine won a title in the 90s. So anyway, tell me about that adjustment when you guys go from Pac-10 North to like, okay, it's a true blue Pac-10, and you're having to tangle with the six-pack schools.
Well, first of all, I was the only advocate in the North that wanted to go into the South,
Oh,
and
wow.
we finished. And it wasn't like they were afraid to play him or anything like that. They were concerned about money, facilities, travel, the ability to play with those. And then you got to remember, like you said, we lost to Washington on the last day of the season in '98, and they won the league. That year, the South gave us 9 games. They wouldn't count on conference schedules, but it was to help our RPI to try to keep us from forcing this joint. We played Arizona at home. They were 10th in the country. We swept them. We went to USC. This is in '98. We won 1 of 3. We had UCLA at home, and at that time the second baseman was the long career.
Brett Boone?
No, it's UCLA.
Utley.
Utley, Chase Utley, and Byrne was in left, our center, and the other guy that was in left that does is MLB baseball guy, Byrne. And so, I mean, it was loaded, and we were 7-2 and never got a chance to go to regional. And Mike Gillespie had told me when we played him there, because they won the national championship that year, beating Arizona State. Hey, if you guys get to a regional, you got a chance to play in the World Series with that pitching. We were loaded. We lost almost everybody. In '99 was our first year as a joint league. And you're right. I'll tell you, we got blistered, and that was the time that I had to go back to the roots of people telling me that you probably don't want to do this. Some coaches in the South were very nice to me and said, Case, I love your enthusiasm, but this is a different deal, man. This is the six pack. It's not like you're going to get a chance to play us. You're going to play us every weekend. Mm-hmm. And after halfway through the season, I was thinking to myself, maybe they were right. Maybe I was wrong. And I had to go back to the roots of who I am and where I learned what it meant to get off the mat from my old man. And that was, I don't care if you get knocked down. I just care if you get up. and that's all. That was his motto. And you don't get off the mat, then that's your fault. You get knocked down, that's okay. Don't like it, you might not like it, but I guarantee it'll happen fewer and fewer times if you keep getting up and up. And I had to adjust how I thought about things. I had to change everything about how we lifted, how we thought, how we ate, how we practiced, how we recruited, what our belief system was going to be, because it could not be what it was prior to getting in that league. And you know the animals that were in that league at that time, big leaguer after big leaguer. You said it. It's a shame what's happened to baseball on the West Coast. It's an absolute microcosm, in my opinion, of just what's happened in society on the West Coast. You know, there's not a lot of kids that are getting encouraged to get involved with youth athletics. There's not a lot of people that go to games. It's just really a sad thing, you know. And at the end there, you know, you could go to a real good, historically, a real good college that had a lot of success, and there would be 3/4 of the stands would be Oregon State fans, and 25% they're home fans. And so
Right.
I could see it happening. I could see it happen in other sports as well. I mean, you know, you look at other than just a couple schools in the pack, uh, football was not relevant. Basketball really had a hard time. And if anybody thought that this demise of the Pac-12 was just happened overnight, then they weren't seeing what I was seeing. And that was a promotion of you know, ping pong in China, and, you know, Olympic sports, and a de-emphasis on major sports. And I just didn't think we had a lot of leadership at that time. So very, very tough time. So yeah, it was difficult, Roons, hanging in there and saying, you know, blah, 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 we're going to do this. And so in 99 was a challenge. And I know I skipped forward a little bit, but that's only because I wanted people to know how good baseball was in
Right.
2000 and 2001. You're talking Stanford and Arizona State and USC, and I mean it was real. And Arizona, you know, and so it is difficult, but we had to make adjustments, and ultimately it was a lot of things. But the main thing was just about who we were, and the kind of player we needed to win here at Oregon State.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue. And you mentioned 2000, like, you know, I think about the coaches you're in that league with. I mean, you know, Murph, my boss, is now the Brewers manager. You know, Mark Marquis, Hall of Famer. Andy Lopez, Hall of Famer. Both have won national titles. Mike Gillespie, Hall of Famer that won a national title. You know, you mentioned the UCLA team. I mean, you've got, you know, we mentioned Chase Utley. I remember we played Utley that one weekend in 2000. And not only did he almost kill our first base coach, but like you felt like it was like every time he came up, he was either going to hit a home run or like a screamer somewhere. Like you just could not miss his barrel. And you're right, like the talent in the league was so outrageous. Let me ask you this, Case. So one of the things from the other side of the field, watching you guys and watching the program grow, one of the things that jumped, like the toughness, the way you guys competed was, you know, that stood out. And you, of course, had incredible assistant coaches at the time. I counted this before this. So you had 5 coaches go on to be Division I head coaches: Dan Spencer, Gary Henderson, who's at Utah now, Billy Jones got to be a head coach, Marty Lee's got to be a Division I head coach, Pat Bailey got to be a Division I head coach, and Nate Yeske has turned down opportunities to be a big league pitching coach. I just want to give you a moment to talk about the staffs that you created, because I'm imagining like you needed those guys to be thinking along with you that, hey, like we have to think like these other pack, you know, like these 6-pack schools.
Absolutely. And I was very fortunate that I had, for the most part, my guys were loyal. You know, if you look at Spence was here for 10 years, uh, Nate was here for 10 years, Bales was here for 10 years. You know, you talk about Billy Jones. He was actually our volunteer at the time, and then he went on to work for you guys down there at Arizona State. But Gary Henderson came in that time when we were combining the North and the South, and Gary was outstanding. You know, he was getting paid $32,000 to be pitching coach at Oregon State, and Kentucky realized how good he was going to be, and he went off and has had a great career. So yeah, you know, ultimately, I would tell you that we had great loyalty in our program. Thank God there wasn't the transfer portal. I probably would have lost about 3/4 of our team every year, but I think that we had to find the right niche for us. You mentioned some guys, Murph. I think the reason me and Murph got along is because I knew what he had because I saw it. But when we competed against him, I think that he respected the fact that we did not fear Arizona State, and he appreciated that, and we were competitive. Mike Gillespie, man, what a great human being. He wrote me a letter when we won the '06 championship. It was I still, and I didn't even know I had it, but when Mitch got the job, gave me a box. It was in my closet, and that letter was in there. And it was just amazing what he said about our program and about the accomplishment of winning the national championship. So now we got our ass kicked in '99. We were 7-17 in conference in 1 year, and I think it was '02. It was I think it was '01. But anyway, it was you could look it up. It was prior on Friday night against USC. We ended the
2001. Yeah, crazy.
We had to win 2 or 3 to get into a regional, according to RAD, who was either on the committee or was visiting with the committee. So we lose to Pryor in extra innings on Friday night.
Mark Pryor, this is.
Mark
yes.
Pryor. We give up 1 run in the last 18 innings of the season and don't go to regional. We shut out Cunningham, Nicholson, like you're talking, 6-0 on Saturday. We lose to Reyes, an eventual first rounder, 1-0 on Sunday. We don't go to regional. So those were difficult. Those are things that people don't realize that Oregon State went through when they see us win a national championship, and the heartbreak of the '98 club not getting in, the 2001 club not getting in, 2004, same thing. We were always knocking on the door, and we took on a philosophy after '99 that we had to shrink the game, that we could not win at Oregon State by out hitting Stanford and Arizona State. We just had to shrink the game. We had to pitch and defend, and no matter what we do on the other piece, we got a shot. You can't work on things when you're down 8-1 and use them. You just got to walk and hit 3-run homers, right? So we had to shrink the game, and we were just not going to waver from that. If the guy was a better defender at shortstop and a little less hitting, we're taking him every time.
Yep.
The guy was a strike thrower. We had to take competitive people on the mound, and we ended up shrinking the game. And my philosophy was that when you shrink the game, then you can manage and you can do the things that you work on. If you win games, that player that, let's just say we graded him out as a 2.5 offensive player and a 4 defensive player, as you win, that'll get better. That guy that's a defender will become a better offensive player. And as you can see, you could use examples, Darwin Barney, you could use Madrigal, you could use Grenier, you could use lots of guys that defensive ability was still there, but they wanted to play where you won. And so that offense, we got more of a complete player.
Yeah. All right, okay, so perfect. This is great. So I want to give you my 2 inflection points where, like, we were watching you guys grow the program, and we're, like, we kept seeing you every year be like this close. It felt like you guys would come to the last weekend, and that's a tough way to live, right? When you feel like you're going to the last weekend having to do X, Y, or Z to get in a regional. Everybody puts so much pressure on themselves. Here were my 2 inflection points when I was like, okay, this is getting real. First was recruiting. I remember, in recruiting, you break up the recruiting list, right? And Jay Safair was the other assistant. He's calling these 50 guys. I'm calling these 50 guys. And one of my guys was Darwin Barney. And I think he was a Portland kid, if I'm not mistaken. Pacific Northwest for sure.
Yes.
And so this is going to sound a little arrogant, but when we were Arizona State and we called a kid from the Northwest, the expectation would be that the kid was going to be like super, geeked up, that we called, and we were going to almost have right of first refusal because of Arizona State, and it's in the South and the fame and all that stuff. And we had killed the Northwest, right? Travis Buck and Colin Curtis and Willie Bloomquist. I mean, like, it wasn't like we didn't have Northwest kids coming down. And I'll never forget calling Darwin Barney, and very first call, we're not even 2.5 minutes in. He's like, Coach, really appreciate the call, but I'm going to be going to Oregon State, and I appreciate your call, but we don't need to continue these conversations. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Darwin, I don't think you heard me. I'm calling from Arizona. I mean, I didn't say that, but I thought that, right? And I'm like, now I'm panicking because I'm like, what am I going to tell Murph? They're a Portland kid. I can't even get on the phone. I'm gonna get terminated tomorrow. And that was inflection point number 1. And I'll get your comments on both these cases. Here was number 2. We're both playing in the surprise tournament in 2004. And this is your 10th team. This is team number 10 for you at Oregon State. You hadn't made the regional yet, but you can see it. And here are some of the names that are on that team. The freshmen, sophomores on that team. And keep in mind, 2004 was not a regional team, but it was right before that 5, 6, 7 run. So some of the kids that went on to be in the big leagues, Jacoby Ellsbury was a sophomore on that team. Cole Gillespie's on that team. Tyler Graham's on the team. But 4 freshmen, Mitch Canham, Kevin Gunderson, Dallas Buck, Jonah Nickerson. And first of all, we all knew about Dallas Buck because he was a second-round pick who didn't sign because he wanted to play football. And then, it sounded like he played football for like 2 weeks. And then next thing you know, you guys have a second-round pick on the mound, and he was gnarly. But I remember watching you guys play in Surprise, and I'm like, dang, like that's a good-looking roster. So go wherever you want with that case. But to me, that 2004 team was one of my all-time favorite Beaver teams because that's when you could see it like, okay, dang, it's on now.
Well, thank you. A great tribute to the state of Oregon and the Northwest in baseball, what was happening then. Something I saw Jed Lowry the other day. And of course, you remember Jed.
Oregon kid, yeah.
15-year career in the big leagues or longer, first-round pick. And we were talking, and Jed went to all of our camps. And Darwin went to most of our camps. Buck never went to anybody's camp because he was just going to go out there and beat you no matter what. But Jed told me, if I can get a Stanford education, I've always wanted to go to Stanford. And he'd stop at our place in Corvallis on the way to Eugene to take the SAT. You could take a class back then when the SAT mattered, when education mattered, and Jed was a solid player. But Jed reminded me of this. He said, I bet you can't go right now to any league. And this was just 2 weeks ago. Him and I spoke together at a country club and find that the 3 consecutive MVPs of the league in the Pac-10 were Jed Lowry, Jacoby Ellsbury, along with Trevor Crow, who was from Westwood, who I got a great story on Murph on that one, and then Cole Gillespie. All 3 Oregon kids, 2004, 2005, 2006. That's how good baseball was. And, we lost Joey August. Joey August was in that deal there. He also went to Stanford. Lowry went to Stanford. And you guys, like you said, you were knocking down lots of people. Travis Buck and Trevor Crow. The story about that one, too. I call Trevor Crow. He's at Westview High School. He's a coach. I absolutely love your program. I think you're going to be good, but I've been playing in the rain my whole life. I'm going to Arizona. Okay. So Travis Buck, who I know isn't going to come to Oregon State because I recruited my tail off on him. And he said, if I don't get another offer somewhere else, I'm going to go to University of Washington. I called Murph. I said, Murph, you're not getting Trevor Crow. Oh, you're trying to get me off him. This is a true story. I said, Murph, I'm telling you, he told me he's going to Arizona. But I got a guy for you. There's a guy named Travis Buck, and this guy can play. You're not getting Crow. Go on. Because I didn't want him to go to UW. You know what I mean? So
great.
But I'm telling you, the baseball, and thank you for remembering that. I think that people don't realize how good baseball was in the Northwest at that time. And now, of course, they're in here pretty heavy. Gunderson told me the same thing that Lowry told me. He said, Coach, I've always wanted to play at Stanford. And I'd had enough. And I said, Gundy, you're just going to have a Beaver uniform on. And he laughed about that, and he liked that. So to this day, as a matter of fact, I believe it, either when I was in spring training with Murph or in Milwaukee, he said his favorite guy was Kevin Gunderson as an opposing guy. He said, I love that guy. And, I think Gundy had 21 or 22 saves in 06, 160-pound guy. Big courage. But no, I think that if somebody said, hey, write a book about how it happened, it would take a lot of time to go down the different roads that we had to go down to figure out how to get it done. Good fortune, good people. No matter what we do in life, first of all, if you don't have expectation of high success, you're certainly not going to get it, bar none. I don't care what it is. If you have high expectation of success, you got a chance. But if your expectation is not to get the best out of somebody, you'll never get the best out of them. You just won't. So I think we maybe, in some guys' views, had an unrealistic point of view on how we saw things. I didn't think it was unrealistic for us to say we should be playing with anybody in the country. But if people don't believe that, it doesn't matter. Once they believe it, It's unbelievable. And when a guy comes to Oregon State now, you're not trying to get him to believe that he's going to go to Omaha. He thinks he's there. He thinks this is why I came here. And that is a mentality which is completely different from the physical part. And so this thing gets broke up into a lot of parts. And you can't win totally on the physical side. You can't win totally on the mental side. You can't win without talent. But you have to have your own authentic way of playing. And I think that I would hope that if a coach played us, they would say, when you play Oregon State, game on. They're gonna come at you, and they're never gonna back down. We may make mistakes. We may not play the style somebody else likes, but I would hope they would say that we would never back down.
Case, by the way, the second half of that Travis Buck story is after you called Murph. That must have been on a Monday night, because I go into the office on Tuesday and I'm just a young single assistant coach, and Murph, like we all meet in the office, and Murph's like, "Hey, run back to your apartment, grab a shaving kit. You're flying to Spokane today, and you're doing a home visit with the Bucks." Because like he was literally committing to Washington that Friday. So I went and grabbed I had my book bag and a shaving kit, and I'm flying up to Spokane, Washington, and we did commit him. And man, Travis Buck was an incredible player for the Devils.
What a player. And I told Murph, I said, I'm telling you, go on this guy, get it done. Because if you don't, because you're not going to get Crow. And we laughed. Yeah. Well, there's another great story that he's in Portland. This is hard to believe now. He's in Portland in a guy's house, a pitcher named Joy Mahalik. I don't know if you remember that name. He got drafted by the Indians. I'm in Arizona at Timmy Alderson's house.
Oh, wow.
Murph calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, where are you at?" "I'm in Portland." I said, "Yeah." "Well," I said, "I'm in Phoenix." He goes, "Oh, yeah, right." I said, "I'm telling you, I'm in Phoenix." He goes, "What are you doing in Phoenix?" I go, "I just got out of Alderson's house." "You're not in Alderson's house." I go, "Where in the hell are you?" He goes, "I'm in Portland at Joey's house."
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so it was they both signed. So neither one of us won that one. But good stuff. Back then, the head coach had to recruit. You had to get out and do some things. And I kind of enjoyed it. And I had great people working for me, great guys, identified players, could recruit, were dedicated to that. I was fortunate, like you said, from the beginning to have really good help.
Hey, Kay, so of the five, so 2005, you guys go to Omaha. I think you guys go 0-2 in Omaha, because that's the year Gunderson kind of made the comment that, he had that famous quote that, "Hey, next year, we're coming back next year and we're going to win this thing." And 6, you guys do that. And then 7 is that famous team where, in theory, you're like Ole Miss 2022, where you're the last team in, but then you just go on this run and win the national title. Thinking about 2005 and 6, like, I'm trying to put my brain around that. Like, this is your 11th team. You guys have never hosted a regional. And what was that 2005 or 2006 regionals where you're hosting, or supers? Was any of those regionals or supers more difficult than the others? Or was this team just on such a roll at this point that it didn't matter?
Well, in 05, obviously, we got to host the regional. It was the first time in the history, I think, unless it happened before the format. And we were picked to finish last. I officiated Tyler Graham's wedding this summer. I laugh. I said, "Graham, you want to kick my ass every day 20 years ago. Now I got to come to Bozeman and marry you. Let's go." So Jacoby and I were standing there in this beautiful setting talking about that. And he said, "Coach, you know what's funny about that?" He said, "We were picked to finish last." And he said, "You guys, when we set our goals," I said, "I want you guys to be part. I want you vested in it. I'm not a coach that goes up and go, 'Here's our standards.'" "Really? Well, how can they be our standards if the players aren't involved?" Like, if you say, "We do this," or "We believe in doing this," and they're not part of that, but if they're part of it, you can. And he said, "I'll never forget you. One of our goals was we wanted to win the league." And he said, when we would practice, he said, "You'd say, 'You think that you're practicing like you're going to win the pack? Is that how you practice? If we can't practice like that, you got to go home." He said, "You shut practice down twice." And he said, "I remember the second time we go, okay, you know what? He's right. We're not. That's our goal." And if he wants to hold us to that standard, then we should have never said we want to win the conference if we didn't allow him to do that. And by God, I'll tell you what, the way we practice in 2005 was the most efficient team I ever had practice. They were just like the 2017 team. You could put a 2-hour and 40-minute practice plan together in 2 hours and 25 minutes. You were done. These teams practiced so efficiently, and we had talent too now, but it wasn't crazy talent.
Right.
Those guys, they were young and they'd never experienced it. And we won the league. We hosted the regional. Shea McFeely hit a walk-off against Ohio State to open the regional. I think that we beat St. John's pretty handily, and Virginia was in that too. But anyway, we won, and the great Mike Gillespie's club, they had Ian Kennedy on the mound. They had Clement behind the plate. They had Hart at third base. They were just really, really good. And we had beat them in the last series at home to win the league. They go to a regional, win that regional, and guess what? We got to play them in the super regionals again. We win game one with Buck on the mound. In game two, we got a lead, and our right fielder, we had a center track at the time, and his knee buckled on the track, and he dropped a fly ball, and they came back and beat us. And can you imagine Oregon State never going to the World Series in modern time? We went in 1952. They lose game two that they had won, and now they got to come back and beat the USC Trojans to go. And nobody really thought we were going to go. The one thing that I do remember saying is after the game is, after 60 games, if you're getting on your club, you got a problem.
Right.
It's like, I said, guys, if you're as good as you think you are, go home tonight and make sure you pack for whatever you'd take to Omaha. That was it. There was no like, hey, we got to do this. Because, we were there, man. We doesn't mean you're going to get it, but we were there. We were good enough to win, and all we needed to do was play. Andy Jenkins hit for the cycle the next day. He's now coaching, ironically, at USC.
Yes.
Jacoby was really, really good. And then a big freshman named Eddie Kuntz came in and struck Clement out with the bases loaded and nobody out. Big. I think we won 10-8.
That's awesome. Very cool. Hey, so you started to allude to it. So I'm going to fast forward through 5, 6, and 7. That there's been a lot written about those teams, and obviously it changed college baseball forever. You guys doing that. So the next team that was one of my favorites was 2013, because you have that 3-game, that you guys go to Omaha 3 straight years and very different ways. You think about the 2017 was so different than 5 and 6, and then I picture from the outside there's an acclamation to now your program's just completely famous, and you have to you have to kind of get yourself what's the word, recalibrated to that. And then 2013 was a team that Michael Conforto, Dylan Davis, 2 of my favorites, the pitchers, Matt Boyd and Andrew Moore. Matt Boyd's still pitching, by the way. Crazy. Yeah. And so and that team, if I'm not mistaken, you're playing in the Super Regional and you're beating Kansas State 2-1, who's an upstart. And it's like, you're going to win this. And it felt like it's going to be this easy trip to Omaha. And then Ross Kivett hits like a bases loaded triple in the 9th. And next thing you know, the Beavs are down 0-1 in their own home. Super. So I wanted to get your take on that 13 team case, because it felt like that team was wave 2 for your program as far as Omaha goes.
Appreciate you bringing back Ross Kivett and the 2-out triple with good memory, Roons. All that
he's coaching too, and he's a young star in coaching.
Yeah, so I heard. That's good. That club was really, really good. We kind of got away from who we were after we won the championship in 07. We really were really good in the Northwest and areas like that. We started to get some people, further away. Matter of fact, the highest ranked recruiting class I ever had was in 08. I probably did the poorest job with handling that. 13 was an example of what we wanted to do, who we wanted to be. Really guys that were here to go to Omaha. And of course, you had the bookends. You had Conforto and Davis, and you had a guy named Tyler Smith played short. We had Rodriguez, but the pitching was really, really good. And we hosted the regional, and I think we beat A&M in that regional. In the super regional, we had Kansas State. And I'll tell you, Kansas State was good. They were real good. They had real arms. We lost that game. I think that was game 2 that he did that. I think it was 1-1. I know it went 3 games, and then we came out, and Davis and Conforto hit back-to-back home runs to right center at our place, as you well know. That's getting on it. And in the first inning, and we got ahead, and I think we won that game 3-2. I think we only scored one other run. Matt Boyd had to come in and get the last 3 outs, pop up to Danny Hayes in foul territory at first base, and we went on to the World Series in 13. Good team. People forget about Jace Fry was on that club.
That's right.
Big leaguer. Tyler Smith played in the big leagues. And then there were some unknown guys, Andy Peterson, a little second baseman. He was, a junior college guy, which we didn't have a lot of those guys. Calvin Kais played third base for us. His dad is who I think is a genius when it comes to hitting. And a lot of our hitting philosophies came from when I went to the Utah Baseball Academy clear back in the late 80s and early 90s. So Cav was there, and Cav could really hit. I had a guy named Tony Bryant. We had a good club. That's a great memory. I mean, we had a tremendous club. Little guy that played center field, Max Gordon, and that was a good club. And we went to the World Series. We just couldn't get. We lost to Mississippi State in Game 1. It's hard to win. And it's really hard to win a lot. That's the separator. There's people that win, and then there's people that win a lot, and that's the separator. And that's kind of what bothers me a little bit about today's landscape in college athletics in general. I do think the players need to have freedom. I do think the players need to have people know it's about them. But I think that some of the difficulties you go through in a program with guys are some of the best things you experience in your life. I'm not sure that they're going to experience those things if things remain the same. But that 13 club, those guys still. We went to Conforto's wedding, and they were all there, and
That's awesome.
Just very successful people in general. And it really, that group had great parents. We had Zach Reeser was on that club. He was a left-handed pitcher. His dad kind of spearheaded our parent group, and we were just great group of people.
That's awesome. And I remember Conforto as a freshman, he's a Washington kid, and I think he led the Pac-12 in RBIs, so true freshman. You're like, goodness gracious. And
he led the nation, Roons.
Nation, okay. Yeah.
Played, and we lost at LSU. I'll never forget this because I think it's such a great story. He somehow he either hit a ball off his shin or he ran into a fence. He did something. He was limping around the last 10 days of the season. So we do the x-ray. Everything's fine. Go to LSU. He's he can hardly run. He's limping around. Heroic effort by us. We're up by a run. Our closer comes in with nobody out in the first inning. It takes us into the bottom of the 8th at LSU in a regional. And that place was they threw I can't remember his name. He's throwing for Toronto now.
Gosman,
yeah. And Nola was on that club. So anyway, he goes off to Team USA, and he's back there, and I get a call from the trainer, said, yeah, we ran him in here, and because of the pain, we did a bone scan, found out he's got a hairline fracture. The guy's been playing with a broken leg for 3 weeks. Wow. So I said, Michael, you need to come home. He said, hell no, coach, I ain't coming home. I'm playing. I said, all right. So, Mike played 3 weeks of the season with a broken leg, and that kind of exemplified who that club was.
That's awesome. Wasn't it, if I remember Conforto's story, his dad was a Penn State football player, and his mom was like an Olympic synchronized swimmer or something, right?
100% right. And we just went to Seattle. His beautiful wife, Cabernet, rented a suite, and they played the Mariners, and I got to see his mother and his dad and awesome. Most of his family. And so it was a good time.
That's so great. All right, so let's fast forward to, I'm going to do these two teams together, 2017 and 2018. And I can make an argument. It's like in modern college baseball, it's the most dominant 2-year stretch that we've seen. The 2018 team is the one that won it all and beat Arkansas in the CWS finals. But the 2017 team, you guys went to Omaha with a record of 54-4. If I took a Division I team and only played Division III teams, I don't know if that team could go 54-4. I mean, and of course, the lineup was, we were talking about this beforehand. Like your lineup, those two teams, the core lineup was 4 first-round picks: Nick Madrigal, Caden Grenier, Trevor Larnach, Adley Rushman. You had 4 first-round picks in your 9 position players, not including Stephen Kwan, who's like this really good big leaguer. Michael Gretler is not mentioned there and might be one of my all-time favorite college players. But that like just this magical 2-year run. I'll give you one more factoid there, Case, and then I want to get your thoughts on these two teams. But like what really jumped out to me about those two teams, and I got to do both of your super regionals, is like just the way that team was recruited. Obviously, you had a bunch of Northwest kids, but you also had Madrigal and Larnach and Kwan were like NorCal, Sacramento type of kids, where your program had grown so much that the best kids in NorCal are picking Oregon State. Grenier was the best player in Vegas. He's picking Oregon State. It's like you guys are getting to go, not only you dominating the Northwest, but now you're going all over the place, where the Southern schools traditionally would have had those players. So yeah, I guess the obvious question would be like, when did you know that those two teams were going to go on a crazy run?
The night that Grenier called me and told me that he just turned down first round money with the 23rd pick in the first round, and he said that's good news and bad news. I go, well, hell, what's the bad news? He said you put up with me for 3 years. I'll tell you, it was amazing how that all went down. And in the recruiting thing, we got to the point where we stayed true to who we were. We wanted to dominate from Central California to the Canadian border. That's half of California, Oregon, Washington, Montana, Idaho. And then if we recruited a kid, say Kevin Abel out of San Diego, we recruited a kid, we didn't recruit the area. If we recruited a kid out of Colorado, we would never spend the time. We didn't have the time, the money but we'd recruit the kid, not the area. Really kept us focused on who we were. Or we would have missed on a kid like Kwan, or we would have missed on a kid like Larnach. You see, Kwan was a kid that really wasn't over recruited. But if we were out in Texas and Arizona, which wasn't our niche, we would have missed him. And so, Madrigal, same thing. Madrigal calls me the day, I think day 2, he got drafted day 2, I believe. And he said, Coach, they're offering me $900,000. I said, that's a hell of a lot of money, Nick, but you told me you were a first rounder. He said, I am a first rounder. I said, well, then they should pay you like a first rounder. And he said, well, they took, I think it was 19th round or whatever. But I said, you have to decide whether you believe in who you are and what you told me, or you have to sign. And I said, that's a lot of money. It really is. But it's not a lot of money if you're a first rounder. And of course, he ended up being the 3rd pick and got $7 million out of here. But those two guys showing up at the same time was crazy. And I had a scout tell me, you'll never keep both of them. They would both want to play short. Tells you something about them, too. They got the dog pile and jump on one another in 2018. Huge commitment to one another. Larnach became a player. I told our radio guy when Larnach was hitting 170 as a freshman, I said, this guy will put up bigger numbers than Michael Conforto when he really buys in, when he really believes it. And he asked me, he said, how come I'm not playing every day? And I said, that's what I want to know. And because you should, because you're good enough and you will. And so kind of a mix there. Obvious walk in the door and play right away. Nick Madrigal, Addy Rutschman type people, Grenier, Kwan had to work his way in there. Larnach, part-time player his freshman year. So I really like that. The thing that was really surprising was, KJ Harrison played first base. KJ Harrison was a hell of a baseball player. Christian Donahue played left field for us that year. We moved him from the infield to the outfield. He was a little kid, a Hawaiian kid from Iolani. And so we had those two guys too. But the thing about that club that was really unbelievable was the pitching really wasn't frontline guys. I mean, if you look at the guys that were pitching for us at that time, Jake Thompson had never really had any success at the college level at all. And Luke had an unbelievable, phenomenal year, maybe the best year of anybody in the country. And then, if you look at Bryce Fimmel, he came here as a third baseman. And, I watched him play third base for a week, and I said, Bales, this guy better have another position because he can't play the infield here. And he said, well, seriously, and he pitched. I said, perfect. It's fall ball. You know how fall ball is. We need innings. So let him throw. He got everybody out. I said, well, this guy's 88 miles an hour. How's he getting us out? I said, we can't hit. Guy went on to winning more games than anybody in the history of Oregon State baseball. So that thing, the 17 team was crazy. I don't know how that happened. I think we won 15 or 16 one-run games, had two 23-game win streaks. I don't think that I could ever do that again. I don't think we'll ever see that again. 54-4, phenomenal. It was. I wish I would hear again. I wish I had a real good answer for you.
Yeah, it was incredible. Just it was that 2-year run, just amazing. All right, so we're going to fast forward in a second, Case. I want to do this read again. Remember, everybody, college baseball's top facility equipment and netting suppliers, Netting Professionals. Netting Pros is proud to be the official netting partner of D1 Baseball and the Sunday Night Coach Conversation Series. Learn more about Netting Pros by going to nettingpros.com. I say this every time. They have the best stuff, and these are incredible people. The folks at Netting Pros truly love college baseball. So it's the perfect thing where you get to support someone that really cares about our sport, and you're getting the best of the best. So, Case, before we go forward to like what the future of Oregon State baseball, anything stand out to you about the 2018 team as far as like my perception of it from the outside is it was, you were the national champions. 2017, you got to the Final Four, but it looked harder, but still that team was pretty dang good. I don't know. Is that a fair assessment that 2018 the trip was a little bit harder?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Madrigal broke his wrist in the fifth game of the season. I mean, Nick missed 20, I think it was 20 conference games, 18 conference games. I don't know. It was really difficult, and there was a lot of reasons for that. One would be the fact that we went 54-4 and didn't win it the year before. And I think in a guy's mind, he's thinking about that. I think there was pressure on those guys that they put on themselves. I don't think that you could take a guy like Nick Madrigal or Larnick or Rudge and think that they wouldn't think that they had not passed the test by not winning in 17. It was about finishing, and the injuries were unbelievable. And some of the ways we won some games in 17, that ball didn't bounce that same way in 18. We lost a couple one-run games that we certainly thought we could win. We're coming to town. Oregon State's coming to town. So how they responded, everything was difficult. I'll tell you, Minnesota gave us everything we needed. Max Meyer rolled in here, and
good.
Yeah, and so it was. And North Carolina here again. Mike Fox had a hell of a club, and they beat us out of the chute. Now I will tell you that we really were out of character. First game one in Omaha and lost. I think we made 3 errors in Omaha, and we were a very good defensive team. We made things difficult, and maybe that's who we are. Maybe that we play better with our backs pinned to the wall, and we had to respond. We did it twice. We lost to North Carolina to open it. You were sitting in there, and then we lost game 1 to Arkansas. And so I'll just tell you that it wasn't easy.
Yeah. And Adley Rutschman, 2018. Remember in 2017, I'll never forget talking to you guys, you and your coaches and everyone just saying that, hey, Adley Rutschman's going to be a star, but the numbers just weren't showing that, right? Like he wasn't, He was kind of still doing the football thing, and he's a switch hitting catcher. He's got a lot on his plate. And then in 2018 in Omaha, like it felt like he didn't make an out for 2 weeks. Like it was just lasers all over the field. I can't remember if he got most outstanding player if Kevin Abel did, but man, Rutschman was bonkers how good he was in Omaha that year.
Oh, he was just, and he just, and here again, like you said, he doubled up his freshman year. I think he hit 178 left-handed and 272 right-handed his freshman year, but still, even his freshman year, I know he played football, so he didn't play fall ball. We go down to Surprise, as we always did, as you well know, and had the tournament in. So first game, I got him in the 4-hole, and Bale says, "Case, you got Rush in the 4-hole." I go, "Yeah, I want him to know he's going to be a superstar forever." And he only proved it. And he in the World Series in 18, you're right, they just couldn't get him out. That was a 2-week period where everybody in professional baseball said, "Wow, this guy's different, and he's different than everybody out there just about because he plays a premier position defensively and does it like he's a shortstop. Smooth, can block balls, can go get balls, can hit from both sides, has power. Just the full package. And I see him being one of those guys that's going to be an all-star for a long time in the big leagues. I think he's just, I mean, as good a player as you could coach at the college level, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's so many great things about, like, of course, his junior year, everyone knows he's going to be the first pick in the draft, and there's the expression "play badly" for Adley. And then I'll never forget, I got to do Sports Center that year for the first time ever, and I'm trying to explain to two anchors who Adley Rutschman is. Clearly, they've never seen a college baseball game before, but we had the clip of him tackling Christian McCaffrey on the kickoff team. It was like, and then they were losing their minds wanting to know more about Adley Rutschman. So just incredible.
He's an NFL kicker if he doesn't choose to be an all-star baseball player.
I'll bet.
Yeah, I mean, he kicked a 63-yarder in high school in a game.
It's so good. He was, just incredible. So, all right. So, Case, let's do this. We're going to wrap with the future of Oregon State baseball. And I will say this, like, I think what Mitch Canham, your former player and who's been the skipper for a few years now, I think him and his staff are doing an awesome job given everything, like they've received some really bad cards. The demolition of the Pac-12 in baseball and Oregon State being left without a conference for a while. And I think about it, like, not only is Oregon State not losing players in the transfer portal, they're winning the portal, even without a conference. That Avia Arquette kid who was everybody wanted this summer, and he's going to be a Beav. And then, Elijah Hainline last year, like, that was a huge get. And then the Caraway kid from SoCal, freshman Trent Caraway last year. And then I was at an All-American high school game this summer, and there's a couple recruits for the Beavs. And then also the kid from Idaho, I think his last name's Whitney, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Dak Whitney is they got him through the draft. So, like, all these things that you would think, like, oh, they're without a conference, they're going to get pummeled. It's not happening. Like, all of these signs are like, hey, this is a really healthy program. Hey, a couple years ago, 2022, Oregon State, I think, was the number 3 overall national seed. Stanford was 2, Oregon State was 3, or vice versa. So, like, the program's still showing very healthy signs, even though they have not popped that next Omaha trip since 2018. But like, for me, Case, like, when it came out that Oregon State was go independent in baseball, at first I was really concerned, and then I was kind of like, okay, this is interesting. Let's see what this looks like when it plays out, and we'll see it when the schedule gets announced this year. Now the Pac-12 will rebuild itself a little bit, but, like, I guess I'll ask my question with this. I remember Cal State Fullerton, when you were building Oregon State, was a program where you were worried about the Big West maybe being a 1 or 2 or 3 bid league, but Cal State Fullerton would go play road games. They'd play anybody, and their RPI was never a problem because their schedule was so ferocious. So I do think that would be one important thing for Oregon State baseball, is they're going to have to play an outrageous, risky schedule to keep the program where they want to be from a relevant standpoint. That's just one opinion, and obviously investment. I think Oregon State views baseball as a major sport at their school, so investing in that way. But what do you think? Like, are those two things that you agree would be important, or is there other stuff that's really important for the future of Oregon State baseball?
Well, I think you hit on a lot of things there that are very accurate. One is the staff's doing a phenomenal job. Everybody on that staff played there, from the director of baseball operations to the player development guy to all the coaches. So, they're ingrained in that culture. They're enhancing that culture, doing a fabulous job recruiting. And, I think it is a concern that we don't have a conference. The atmosphere here, as you well know, is a place kids want to play.
Mm-hmm.
Guys aren't leaving, like you said, because it is a phenomenal place to play. When you're playing baseball at Oregon State, for us, and the way we feel about it, you're playing basketball at Kentucky. You are the sport, and that's important. Kids want to play there. Sadly, there's not a lot of places on the West Coast right now that have that type of an environment. And we talked about that. Unbelievable that you could go to a place like USC. At the end of my coaching career, and have 1,000 Oregon State alumni there and 65 Trojan fans, and that's sad. I think Arizona and Arizona State moving to the city parks was a statement that well, Arizona for sure couldn't get in, but Arizona State did when Murph was there. They were packing it, but it just tells you what the schools thought about baseball, that they weren't willing to do something to keep playing at Packard Stadium is crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's no home field advantage. You go play now against Arizona State. It's hard to play in the desert, but it's not like you're going to ASU. And at the end, when Andy had great teams, and you go to Arizona, nobody'd be there. Now, when you guys played him, it was probably a little different because of the in-state rivalry. And so I think, sadly, on the West Coast, here again, we started with this. I don't think that people are investing in baseball. Oregon State is. Oregon State not only investing in their facilities, they're investing in the players, they're investing in the people, and that's what we are about. And having said that, I don't think it's sustainable over a long period of time to not be in a conference. I think it's better to be in a conference. You're going to have all league teams. You're going to have an automatic qualifier. You're going to have a TV deal where your exposure's really, out there. Oregon State can do it for now because, like you said, they have cachet. They can call people and say, "Hey, we want to play." Now, not a lot of people want to come to Oregon State and play. You even when I was here, I'd call some schools. There were some big schools, and they'd say, "Case, we'd love to play. Come on down." But we don't need to go there. We got great weather. We don't have to. And I respect that. I get that. But I do think that, it's funny. George said that to me when he was at Fullerton, and the next year he got the job at Oregon. And he did. And I laughed about that. I said, "Hey, George, remember me telling you?" You go, "Yeah, come on down, Case. But why would I go up there? I can play home games." So, I think they've done a really good job this year of getting quality games. I know they're going to some tournaments that are high-profile tournaments early. But I do think that something will happen to where they'll be hopefully in a conference. This football thing's going to drive everything. There's nobody's hiding that. If you look at how decisions were made, it certainly doesn't make sense when you and I's minds, when we were coming up, that USC and UCLA would go into the Big Ten to play baseball. We would think that is just
bonkers.
Bonkers. And so for them not to be able to figure that out from administrative levels just kind of reflects a little bit of where the influence is coming, and it's coming from football. And so, because football drives everything. And we have a problem too, because of the fact we don't have any clarity on NIL and transfer portal and where it's going to end. And, if you look at things like revenue, there's not a lot of baseball programs at revenue, and there's not a lot of football programs at revenue. There's certain leagues that do. So, do the players share in the revenue only, or do they share in the revenue and the loss? Something has to be figured out. The NC2A needs to get specific guidelines out there so people know where this is headed. That'll help us in baseball, I think, to understand what the possibilities are out there for us. I know how hard our administration is working to try to make it the best situation they can make it. So I'll tell you, you hit it on the head. We got 3 projected first rounders this year at Oregon State. They have a tremendous opportunity to do big things. They did big things last year. Isn't it kind of ironic? We start talking about where this thing started, and now we talk about the disappointment of losing in a super regional.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So, I told Mitch when he took the job, I said, the good thing about high expectations from the fan base, if they didn't care, there would be no expectation. The bad thing, they think you should win it every year. Augie Garrido told me that when I first got to Omaha the first time. He said, "Case, the Texas fans think the season starts in Omaha." I said, "Man, I never thought about it that way." But so I was blessed to be in it. Still dabbling around in it, messing around with it. I miss kids. I miss the energy of baseball. I don't know how I would have handled some of the things that are happening now. But I do think the game is very, very healthy. I think that the things that are surrounding it right now are detrimental to it. And we got to figure out how to prevent that from happening, because I do think the game is high level coaches, high level players, high level performance. It just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, agreed. And what you said a second ago, Case, like the game is really like college sports feels unhealthy. Like unhealthy is maybe too dramatic. College sports feels too chaotic right now, but college baseball has never been healthier and growing. And I think Oregon State's a big part of that story. What the Beavs, what your program's accomplished. Every story needs kind of upstarts out of nowhere. And I think of three things. I'll summarize it as we wrap, Case, with this. Like you mentioned Goss Stadium. I grew up in the Philadelphia area with the Philadelphia Palestra, which is like this basketball cathedral. And like it's just like these bleachers, and like Wilt Chamberlain's played there, and like every great Kobe Bryant's played there. And Goss Stadium has that feel to me where, like, I tell people that are going there for the first time, you like those fans are almost on the field. Like it is a spooky place to play. And I always get feedback from other announcers that have never been there that are like, man, that was so cool. I think of that. I think of in 2017 when we went up there for the Super Regional, and one of the directors from ESPN, who, like, this dude's done Super Bowls and Monday Night Football, every big event that you can picture, and he's so fired up because you guys are number one in the country, and he's like he's peppering us. He's like, all right, someone explain to me how the number one team in college baseball is located in Corvallis, Oregon. Like, is this Amsterdam? Like, are there casinos? Like, somebody explain to me what's going
But
on here. And it was
that
so, yeah, it was
great
incredible.
American spirit, Roons. That's
Yeah.
why things happen that nobody ever dreams could happen. And I'll tell you, the two SEC teams that came here, both their skippers talked to me after the series, and one of them texted me afterwards. And it wasn't when Butch was up here, when Auburn was up here. He said, "I was told that this is on your bucket list to play. That you need to come here." And they're thinking, "Hey, we play places that got 10 to 12,000." He goes, "I
Mm-hmm.
said, no, this is real." And he goes, "I mean that. It is as good an atmosphere as we've played in." And same thing, couple years earlier when one of the clubs came in here and he said, "Guys told me," and I'm thinking, "Come on, man." And he goes, "I'll tell you, Case, it was real. It was unbelievable. It was awesome." He goes, "You feel like the fans are in your dugout." And
So
so,
great.
yeah, it is. And we just finished a $7 million hitting facility out in center field. It's going to be phenomenal.
Nice.
Like that. We want to finish right field and bring it over to the right field deck. We have bleachers in right field. We want to make them permanent with some suites. So a lot of good things happening, and love college baseball. Just, the World Series last year was phenomenal. Like you said, I think our game is progressing at a better clip for me than some of the other NC2A sports, which are phenomenal, but have been going on for a long time. But baseball, the television exposure and what they've done with the World Series, and it's really, really special.
Yeah, agreed. Case, this was so fun. I knew the hour would fly by. I really appreciate this. As we wrap, I want to say thanks to our friends at Netting Pros again. Can't do this without them. And then let me tease my next two shows because these will be very fun. So next Sunday night we've got Cal State Fullerton. You mentioned George Horton, so we're gonna have George Horton. We're gonna have Rick Vanderhook. We're gonna have Dave Serrano.
Oh man.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, again, I love going down memory lane, Case. So the 2003 Cal State Fullerton team. Think about this. It was a college team with 10 big leaguers on it. Justin Turner hit ninth on that team. Justin Turner hit third for the Dodgers for part of his career. He hit ninth as a freshman at Fullerton. So that's next week. And then the following week, we're going to do a deep dive on Tennessee. That program from the Rod Delmonico days to, the last 4 years Tennessee's had in baseball have been I'd argue that they're the top program in college baseball over the last 4 years, 3 out of 4 years in Omaha. So,
Oh man, they've been phenomenal. And so I'm glad that you gave me you teed up for the next two shows, because I got something for both shows. So first of all, say hi to Hookie and George.
yes,
Hookie to me was just so
beautiful.
funny that I just loved it. I thought he was just a 10. George came up here. We had great battles. People don't realize now, if you look at a little span there from, I want to say maybe 10 through 15 or 9 through 14 or something, you look at some of the guys who were in the big leagues, they had a lot of big league guys, still
Yeah,
do.
they did.
And
Yep.
they brought in some talent, and he came up here and started a program that had been dead for 20 some years or longer. So hats off to George. Rod and I were sitting, I was sitting in down at spring training to watch Nick Madrigal play his first big league spring training game, and his son was there. We were sitting right next to each other. A foul ball's hit, okay, so it's kind of slicing towards us, and him and I kind of both go to the move like this, and he goes, "God, Case, wouldn't that be something?" Both D1 coaches move in case his wife gets hit with the ball. So
that would not. Oh, that's great. Yeah,
so it was Rod's last year at Tennessee. Was it 05? Or, I mean, because was he in the World Series in 05?
05, they were in the World Series. That was he was the coach of that team in 05.
Yeah. So
yes.
I was there, so obviously I think they were in the other bracket, but so I knew who Rod was, and it was kind of ironic we were there, and he's watching his son, and I'm watching Nick, and we were allowed. Yeah, so say hi. Roons, you're great for college baseball. Everything you guys do it's really good, man. And I look at what D1 baseball's done and all those things. It's really good.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Well, let's wrap it there. The Case, that's the ultimate compliment. You got Oregon State baseball so good that Oregon had to bring baseball back. That was the ultimate compliment. So, hey, that's it. Let everybody have a great week. And again, we'll have the Cal State Fullerton show next Sunday night. That's it. We'll catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.